when you have any sort of capacity of volunteers, I'm going to keep saying the word steward. I just like the word right now. But, caring for people, this is a person dedicating their time. And I was that photography volunteer for a long time. Before that, I played piano and I was a volunteer in the worship band. And so I think that I have that perspective of being a volunteer. I've been at churches that did not care for their volunteers very well. I think that they had the right heart, but I don't think that they accomplished it because me on the receiving end still left feeling very frustrated.
Welcome to the Pure Heart Church podcast. We have a great episode today. You're going to get to hear from two people on our creative team as they talk about the things that they navigate throughout the week, coming up with different creative content for our church, and maybe the reason why that they do that kind of stuff. It's going to be a really good podcast, and I think you're going to love it. So let's jump right in.
So we wanted to give you a little behind the scenes and talk a little bit today about why we do some of the creative arts things that we do here at Pure Heart. And I'm with Jill. Jill, what is your title here?
I'm the communications director.
Communications director. That sounds like a job that would be very boring. It could be very
it does sound boring, yeah.
But actually it's the complete opposite of that.
So true. I do weird things here. My job gets so creative and strange, but it sounds super boring. It sounds like I must be writing emails
or doing text or stuff, but you actually do a typical week. What type of things do you do?
So a lot of social media stuff, engaging and creating content for that. A little bit more simple stuff like creating slides for the weekend, working with our teaching pastor as he does the online recording, and then the weekend recordings, making sure those slides are ready. Every other slide that we need for the weekend that are announcements wise, that kind of stuff. Stuff that gets printed, whether it be signage outside or, papers inside. That kind of stuff. A lot of visuals.
Photos. You and your team are taking photos on the weekend.
Yeah, me and my volunteers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's you guys are creating thumbnails. You're creating graphics. You're creating the content that's in the lobby that are on those TVs. Mm-hmm. I mean, people don't think about the amount of things that are surrounding us that someone had to just create because we're just so used to seeing that stuff because we're in a visual world nowadays. But it really is, I think, something that when you go to a place and it's not correct, it actually can kind of throw you for a loop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so true.
So I remember when I first came to Pure Heart, we were Pure Heart Christian Fellowship, and we had this sign that it was from the 80s, and our font was kind of a papyrus-style font. People that know graphic design think the Avatar font almost. And I remember I actually hadn't come to Pure Heart, and at this point I wasn't really into the creative arts area of my life. I had actually been in construction, and you weren't in creative arts before you came here.
Yeah, so true.
But I actually had passed by Pure Heart Christian Fellowship several times, and I thought it was kind of like some sort of weird, what is this, a Christian fellowship? That sounds like a cult. They've got this big building out front that's looks like a mosque. It was this 60s dome, and so the visual appearance of the place actually was an off-putting thing for me, and the name. And so when I came and started working here and became part of the creative arts team, I began kind of, a mission of going what should this look like to help people find what they need to find, to engage with the service. And I think you've come from, your background is?
Well, yeah, I just graduated last year studying sports medicine. So
which is totally creative arts.
Big 180. Yeah, no creative arts at all. My classmates looked at me like I was absolutely crazy. You're working at a church? I'm sorry. Are you okay? Yes, I'm okay. I just like it here. Yeah.
But you got involved how?
Well, I knew Allie she was in my role before I came here, and she did this job wonderfully. She came from a previous church doing a lot of the same stuff, was mentored by our boss, Heath, mm-hmm. and, kind of grew up in this role and got an opportunity in Chicago so that, her role could grow and she could do even more. And so that was a pretty exciting opportunity. But because Allie and I were pretty close friends and I had showed interest in this, she was like, here you go, basically. Just kind of tossed me
hey,
into the deep
we don't
end.
Gotta find someone.
I had downloaded Photoshop like 2 months before getting my job here. And so it was a very big shock jumping into this job. But that's how God works sometimes.
It is interesting because, and I mean, what you do is you do a great job. I'm not just saying that as a form of to say it for flattery or anything. You actually do. And one of the things I've shared with you personally is I think there's a finesse to church design. You look at churches and some are very corporate looking. Mm-hmm. Let's say a CCV has more of a corporate look. Mm-hmm. Maybe more Pentecostal churches, those definitely have a different look than like a Baptist church. Mm-hmm. And so to find a church like Pure Heart that is very into mental health and wellness and care for community, vulnerability. Mm-hmm. I think you've done a good job of trying to do things that are visually engaging, but also like it has a good look. And so that's the hard part when, I've hired a couple of our graphic designers we had here in the past and worked with other ones over the years, and everybody has their own look, and that's part of making it their own. But to find what is the look for your church visually through graphics, design, branding, videos, your even our worship, what is that stuff? How does the arts look? Yeah. I think is a process to navigate. How did you kind of feel like you landed on some of that?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you. I appreciate your compliments. And it's definitely super, super challenging. I mean, what you're doing is it says it in my title, but you're communicating. And we do that lots of different ways. Social media is a way, and our visuals are another way. Visuals being like even the building itself, the color of the walls, the kinds of seats we have in our auditorium, like all those things come together. And a lot of the stuff that I came into was already set in place. And so I was trying to step into Allie's shoes before me. I looked up to her, and she, she's a professional in my eyes, and she would say like, I don't really know what I'm doing either. But to me, it was like, this
And
person.
Allie, if you're listening, the check is in the mail.
The check is in the mail. But she, she really influenced me in how she created a visual, and she was really good at branding. She was very consistent. Her personality is pretty consistent if you know her. I mean, she's just wonderful all the time.
She was the
very
smiling
level-headed
drummer girl if you watch the online campus.
She's wonderful.
Just a happy drummer.
Yeah. And so anyways, coming into this role, it was like, how can I match that? Still bring my own look and things that I think are beautiful and visually engaging is the phrase that you were saying, but still honoring what she had already done, like the groundwork that she had done, just trying to build off of it. And so I think a lot of the stuff that I've done and even the compliments that I get, I'm like, I can't take full credit for it. I've had a lot of support from the team and, building off of a foundation that was really solid. So.
And what I appreciate, one of the things that you do also is while you have your own talents and your own designs and your own things that you come up with, some of that is looking and trying to find stuff that you go, oh, that's that video or that idea or that concept, how could I incorporate it into something else? But really trying to then come to the team and be like, hey, I want to be a team player. What are you guys working on? Mm-hmm. And I know you've been like, as we try and build out a new series, we go, you and I and some of the other members of the team.
Just thinking the same thing, yeah.
Yeah, we have conversations of like, what should this look like? What does it feel like? Do we want it to feel literally like the title? Does the title even work? Like the series title? Do we want people standing up? Do we want them sitting down? Do we want it to be a very simple set? Do we want it to be like a very engaged set? And now sometimes that stuff, we are a church. We don't have unlimited budget, unlimited resources. And so sometimes there is the tyranny of the urgent, or like, hey, if we spend more time on this, it means we have to spend less time on that. Or an Easter or a Christmas is coming up. And so we go, well, this is something we really need to buckle down on. I think even as we came through Christmas this year, I think there was a lot of new team members, and we were all kind of trying to figure out what part each of us even played in those different design roles and that different language of what we came together with. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking of the series stuff when you started that conversation coming off of what I had just said, and like how it surprised me. I kind of thought my impression was that a lot of the work that Allie had done was very independent. So it surprised me how much of it was a team effort, coming to the team, talking as a group, like, this is what the series is. This is what, Pastor Dan is visioning for this. Like, this is his hope for where this series goes. This is what he's going to talk about. So how can we as a team, this is what we talk about, how can we begin to support what he's going to be sharing? He's sharing the gospel. How can we support the spread of the gospel, the actual like crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus Christ, like the good news? How can we express that visually and do it in a new way that's fresh for people, people who are new to their faith and they're just like, well, that looks cool, like I'm interested. And also people who have been attending church for a long time and are just have seen the same thing over and over and over again. So yeah, getting to work as a team and talking about, what is that stinger, that short video that represents that series? What does that look like? In the set design, exactly, like, can that play off of it? Can it elaborate on this topic? Can it, empower what Dan is saying or whoever's speaking? Like, can all work together? Can the visuals be not a distraction, but further communicate what's trying to be said?
I think that's a hard thing, is because there's times where you see things that you go, oh, that's really cool, but it actually takes away from, I think, what they're trying to do. And I think that's a balance we have to sometimes navigate. Is this enhancing or is this distracting,
Our whole motto here at Pure Heart is it's okay to not be okay. And then we have that ending of, but it's not okay to stay that way, not okay to stay stuck, however that phrase goes. I should have that memorized. I'm sorry, guys.
You got it.
I got it. I got the first part. But, we can't say it's okay to not be okay and not actually create a place that it's actually safe to not be okay. And, if we're creating a space that's just as more and more and more frustrating and hard to get connected and hard to receive the word of God, like we're not doing a service. We're not doing what we're trying to do.
Yeah, we're creating obstacles for the people. And I think there's something also that, I believe that I've really tried to bring in. I've seen a lot of other team members try and bring in too, and I've seen you do this, is really prayerfully go and be like, God, like, I'm not the end all of creativity. One, there is a collaboration that we have, but like
Definitely.
going to God and be like, God, what do you want this series to look like? God, what do you want us to do for Easter? And there's been times where we've actually, Dan's come to us or we've come to him and said, like, I don't think this works. I really feel like this is not what we're, accomplishing what we want to do. And I just, can we think about it, pray about it? And it's interesting because sometimes God's brought answers, I feel like, in the midst of that, because I love how Pastor Heath is like, creativity, we serve the most creative, the God that created everything.
Yeah.
We should, as the church, be creative.
Yeah, definitely.
I love that idea is like, hey, let's use these things. Again, we don't expect everybody to get the nuance of whatever it's, some people will, they'll be like, oh, look at that, I got that.
Yeah.
But I think subliminally, there's a lot of things that maybe we can, in a healthy way, right, that prevent distractions, like move people towards a goal. That as Zach's creating like little bumper videos, as Pepe, who does a lot of our color grading and set design, like if you look over the last few months, even today you can see, we have this whole set. It looks like you and I are just hanging out on a couple little like couches here, but we actually, if you are watching the YouTube version,
several
you
cameras,
can see that there's cameras, there's lighting. I mean, Pepe spent time like moving items of furniture, putting little plants and stuff where they go, adjusting light brightness. And that's something that I had as a value, but many times I didn't have people that had bandwidth to be able to work on some of those things. And yet visually, it's not stuff that most people notice, but you notice if it looks bad. I think there's also just the aspect of sound design. Zach, who does our podcasts, he spends so much time to make things sound good.
Yeah, listens to the same like 2 seconds clip and just over and over and over until it's nice and refined and goes through a whole song. Takes some hours. This poor guy.
Yeah, it's actually amazing because
the headaches he must get.
On the recordings, there's stuff to try and make those worship set recordings we use on the online campus stuff sound the best that they can. Going in and fixing little things and tweaking it just so that it's like I'm not a musician, so it's stuff that I can appreciate what he's doing, but I probably wouldn't have caught sometimes the things that he is fixing, but other musicians would.
Yeah, and it goes both ways. Even sometimes like talking to the band about the media team, you guys capturing video and audio and so kind of giving them some insight of, hold on, it's going to take them a few minutes to get this part set and this part set. And there's a little bit more that goes into it. I mean, for our last worship recording that we did, it took us, I think, 5 hours. We were setting up the day before, even practicing how we were going to move the cameras and adjusting. We still, hit a snag in the road the next day, and it all worked out, and it really was for our benefit. But like the effort that went into it ahead of time and day of is a lot of behind the scenes stuff that's only possible because we have so many talented people on the team, really.
And I think it's something that we're trying to continually get better. We don't want to say that we're the end all, because we want to do the best we can, but it's like, man, where can we get inspiration?
We're just trying to steward this gift very well.
Yeah. Steward well.
I wanted to talk about social media as well, and
maybe just
you should talk about it because it's my area. So I want you to.
You should talk about it.
I want you to kick it off first, though, with some more of the why. You're the pastor here, so why does Pure Heart Church care about our social media?
Yeah, that's actually a great observation. So here's one thing that I know is that I've seen personally, since I've been here since 2014 on staff, most people used to drive by the church or, like I said, I gave that example earlier of Pure Christian Fellow, what is it? The 80s looking font. And so that was how people used to come to identify a church. And then it was then they would go to Google. And then it became hey, your website should actually look good. And your brother is one of the ones that he's on our team too, on the creative teams. He's on our staff team.
Right.
And he's a part of making the website. How can you find the information? How can it look good? Because we've all come across a bad website.
Oh, yeah.
And you can't find the information you need. And so trying to make sure that the app or the website, Blake is, has been on our team for a while, those guys on our IT department, that's an important thing. It's what do they do? Just look at computers? It's no, these guys are creating a portal to that. And in the same way now, social media, I think, has even eclipsed the web page of the portal, the gateway to how people develop an opinion of what your church is.
Yeah, it's a new way to search and to find information. I even catch myself, I don't even think about it, of, if I hear about a new company or a brand or a church even, and I'll pull up their social media account, and that's my first impression. That tells me a lot about them. And, sometimes you judge the book by the cover a little bit too soon, and you're like, oh, well, and you don't realize, it's a staff of one intern or one volunteer. And so sometimes that's what it looks like. Thankfully, we have a full staff, so we have more to steward well and to communicate it so that when people do come across our page, they go, oh, wow, this church takes things seriously. They actually mean what they say, and they create a safe space. That's the hope, at least. So.
Well, even for example, the photos you post on social media, you've got
photos that my volunteers take.
Well, yeah, you take them too. I see you running around the camera too. But even those team members, I think someone would just assume you just give them a camera and they just run around and take a bunch of pictures. And that's just what you post online. But that's actually not the intentionality you use.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a small team right now, but when you have any sort of capacity of volunteers, I'm going to keep saying the word steward. I just like the word right now. But, caring for people, this is a person dedicating their time. And I was that photography volunteer for a long time. Before that, I played piano and I was a volunteer in the worship band. And so I think that I have that perspective of being a volunteer. I've been at churches that did not care for their volunteers very well. I think that they had the right heart, but I don't think that they accomplished it because me on the receiving end still left feeling very frustrated. And so, caring for my volunteers and sitting down with them, I've walked a handful of them through editing. It's an overwhelming process. I recently learned how to do that, like Lightroom, and I use Lightroom Classic. If you know what that is, you get it. If you don't, that's okay. It's not all that exciting, but I remember recently opening that up and feeling like this is way too complicated. I'm not a rocket scientist. I'm just trying to get this photo to look nice. And so the research that I do and watching videos and trying to understand better how to do it myself so that I can teach my volunteers. Even just this past weekend, my volunteer, shout out to Kelsey, she did so good this weekend, especially capturing baptism photos, which are so heartfelt. You're crying and taking photos, and it's wonderful. But she was sitting right here actually in this seat, and I'm sitting next to her watching her edit, trying to give her enough space. But, and she's come such a long way. When she started, it was okay, I don't know what to do. And so then trying to prompt her of, okay, well, what do you want to do here? Okay, well, I want this to change. I want this to change. Okay, you can either do it this way or you can do it this way, and trying to give her options and let her be able to do it on her own. Because for a lot of my volunteers, their goals are more long-term. They're not just, I'm here to do what you asked me to do. It's, I care about photography. I had a volunteer who she wanted to start a photography business, and bless her, she has, and she's done so good. And I'm grateful that I got to be a part of like her earlier learning experience of like trying to get better and learn. Honestly, we learned together. She would teach me things and I would teach her things, but
you're capturing moments.
Yeah.
Anybody can walk around with a photo, with a camera taking photos. But there really is something about capturing the moments of a weekend. Whether it's a small child or it's whether parts of worship, we don't have to have the prettiest people, right? You don't have to have the big show. It's like the real humans that people can identify with. And they go, wait, these people look friendly.
The emotion.
Nice. The emotions. This looks like a place that's good things are happening. I think is always our desire and our goal. And then what I love too, that I think something that I started to see you lean into on social media is you're trying to find stuff that it's fun and shareable. Because there's, the regular person probably isn't going to share a bunch of like the random Photoshop photos from the weekend, right? Like to their page, but something that's funny, that's something that's engaging, something that's catchy or meme-ish, to be able as the church, just lean into some of that stuff. That someone that might never come to church before would go, oh, wait, that's fun. That looks like that church. It's different than what I thought church might be. It's maybe not stoic. Man, it looks like they have a good time. They don't take themselves super seriously. We take what we do seriously. Don't get me wrong. As Bob says, don't hear what I'm not saying.
Yeah.
But like we want to, hey, we're real people. We want to just engage with you like this. We want to be a safe place.
Yeah.
And I think the front of our church nowadays, it's social media, has to communicate so many things to so many different people groups.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's got to be diverse, which really, I mean, for me is a little bit challenging. I think that I'm an old person trapped in a not old body. So sometimes I have a harder time with the trends. Actually read one of our coworkers, he leads worship and he's wonderful, but he will send me trends all the time of like, this social media trend is awesome, especially for relating to church things that like, he's like, I want to do this. Like, let's make this happen. Because like you said, it says something about your church when you can have this lighthearted joy about you. I think people are looking for joy and peace and honestly, like just truth. Like they just want to hear real things. And so balancing like the photos on every Sunday we post, like this is what our weekend looked like. And for a time I thought those were like the least important. But honestly, what I've been finding is that because they're so consistent, those are the posts that perform the best. Yeah. People love seeing themselves or their friends like, I was there, I saw that moment, and even they share those so well. But then to balance that with, like sort of random short video kind of trends that are a little bit more silly and not super serious, but still speaking very, very real truths. And then even to add a third thing to it, because, you're trying to really round out this page, to actually bring just straight up scripture and truth, pulling from the weekend message and just, here's a short clip. If I just catch you at the right time and you're desperate for truth, you're going to stop and listen. I don't need to make the word of God more enticing. It already is good. And I know that'll speak for itself. So trying to like round it out and have all these things and steward what we have well, the time that I've been given on staff, getting paid to do this. So I should take it seriously. Yeah.
You mentioned editing too. And there's, again, it's not to, nobody knows what someone else's job takes until we do it. Right. Yeah. I mean, I have a idea of what you do, and yet I also have no idea what you do. If that makes
same
sense.
For you, Matt.
It's because there's so many things that it takes, or even thinking through or processing through or trying to figure out. But to give a shout out to like people like our video editor Emily. She, like our Christmas services, she spent so much time trying to combine these different shots in different ways. In different locations, and this looks, and she spent so much time thinking about the coloring and the design. On our weekend, we have our tech team that they're looking at, how do we, the timing between different videos, how do we cut between one shot to the next, the shots we use, how to train our volunteers.
Just limiting distractions in service. It's so easy. You hit the wrong button and all of a sudden the lights go out, or the slide is like, or the video is like half of the screen, and, it's volunteers trying to do all these things. So to take the load off of them, to not be overwhelmed, but to also, appreciate the congregation that we do have there. We're trying to make this a a safe space for them that doesn't have any distractions. So,
I think also one of the things I just really, as we're wrapping up here, that I really value, and you mentioned a little bit about your volunteers. We as a church, we don't have all the money. I think people always, I hear churches, they got all this money, and it's like, it's really when we do a hire, it's really thinking through like, okay, this person's going to cover 3-4 different kind of areas that a regular job, maybe they'd have one person for. So kind of people that are generalists, but also very good at something. But what I love is our volunteers, because we have people that care deeply and they go to work 40 hours a week, and then they come and they be a part of creative teams in different aspects, whether they're serving on the worship team, whether they're being a part of your team or video team, the tech team on the weekends, and to be willing to be humble enough to like be coached and not be experts at all and just go, I'm going to jump in. Like I'm an accountant,
being willing.
but I'm going to try my best to let people hear about Jesus. Like those people, like what they're doing, they're a part of God's message going out, and they, most of the time, there's no recognition for that. Yeah. And I think it's also an amazing opportunity. I had one gal one time who her grandma, brought her to the booth, and she was about 13 or 14. And the grandma said, hey, she really loves lights. And this girl's like, I'm not really into the whole church thing, just to let you know, but I really am into lights.
She's like, do not wrap me into this.
Yeah. And she's like, but I really am interested in the lights you do. And we ended up having her be a part of our tech team. And we were able to be a part of discipling her and growing her and being an engaged part of life. So whether it's from people that are longtime part of the church to people that are new ones interested in the creative technology or the creative arts or graphic design or social media, they just want to learn something. It's like, what an amazing gift we have to be able to be a part of, like, hey, I want to be able to bring you in to use your gifts and talents to push God's message forward, to push forward the kingdom. Yeah. And that's what I love that we get to do.
Yeah. Catch the vision and share it.
I love it.
Yeah.
What a great episode. And hey, if you heard something today, if you were like, hey, that creative team stuff sounds really cool, I want to be involved, let us know. Email us at podcast@pureheart.org. We'd love to get you connected, plugged in, so that you can use your creative skills and talents to do stuff with us as well. Well, we thank you so much for listening to this podcast. It's been such a great time. We've had such a great season, and we're looking forward to many more great episodes. So stay tuned. Every Tuesday, we're going to have a new episode. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. It's going to be a great time. We'll talk to you next week.